so good. Okay, the thing that kept coming up for me is, like, we've talked about it, but the idea that trauma is hard, right? And starting to explore that or continuing to explore that, but the impact of relationships on that, like on our past and on our present and on our future trauma, the richness of our relationships makes such a difference. And it's almost like when we think, oh, I want to build these relationships, we don't think for the purpose of making the traumas I experience a better experience. So it's like a side effect.
Right.
And then I was thinking about Pep with your mom going up and finding what your dad left, and then it inspiring her to create beauty. It's like your dad didn't think, you know what, I'm going to leave these books. What's your mom's name?
Rose.
I'm not going to leave these books here for Rose to find later, because I think if she finds them later, it'll inspire her to create beauty. But him being him, they were there. She found them and was inspired.
It's amazing. Yeah.
That's a stunning story.
Oh,
It's a stunning story.
yeah.
I just love it. She inspires me on so many ways. I can't even, I mean,
Yeah.
She's no, you know, I think that the one thing about her is, she is, Curt, you said it's never too late. She just is growing constantly and learning and looking at herself in different ways, looking at God in different ways, looking at her relationships, and yeah, she's amazing.
I remember when my mother, we threw her a big 80th birthday party, and let's see, that would have been in 1998. So Rachel was eight. No, she wasn't. No, I don't know when that was. Yeah, it would have been, anyway, whatever. Rachel, they crafted a poem, and Rachel read this poem for her. It had my mother and had the entire, she didn't read, it was memorized. And she stands up on the chair and she, she says this poem. And like, even then, Rachel, the actress, like the whole thing about the comic timing, like pausing, waiting for the applause, the laughter, like she had it down. Earlier in the day, so this is a big gathering for 100 people. Earlier in the day, there had been a luncheon just for the family, immediate family members, and the sons all got up and had things to say about her. And so when I got up, I was last. I was like oldest, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I was last to go. And I said, when it was with my oldest brother, he wasn't allowed to go to the prom. My next oldest brother could go to the prom, but he couldn't date Catholics. My next oldest brother could date anyone he wanted as long as she met certain social criteria. And Curt wasn't allowed to date at all.
Oh my gosh.
That's not where I thought this was going.
No, I thought
I said, right. And I said this out loud. I said, like, it was pretty clear that at the end of the day, it was okay. They could meet certain criteria to marry, but like me, like I wasn't going to be able to marry anybody. And the reason I could say this was because it was absolutely true. Because I dated a couple of girls in college and everything was fine as long as it wasn't real. And when Phyllis came along, oh my gosh. Like I can't tell you how embarrassed I was at my mother's behavior. It nearly completely torpedoed our relationship. It did torpedo the relationship I had with a girl before I was dating Phyllis in a way that like, that's a person who I like. I mean, the two girls that I did were like lovely, beautiful young women who either one, like they're just, but like there's a thing going on here, right? But when my wife entered, when Phyllis entered the picture, and we were going to, move forward, it really put my mom into a crisis. And she has this conversation with a friend of hers, who pretty much has a come to Jesus conversation with her.
Yeah.
And says, "Is this? Is this? I mean." There are things that my mom said to Phyllis that were just like, I'm like, I can't believe that you're saying these things. Right. Mm-hmm. And so this woman says to my mom, well, is she a believer? Yes. And does she love your son? Yes. And she says, so what's the problem? I think Betty, I think you have an issue here. I don't think this is about your son. I don't think this is about Phyllis. I think you have an issue. And you got some business to take care of with God. And there was like this 180-degree turn.
Wow.
And my mom from that time on made this push into growth. And she was, I mean, she and my wife became extraordinarily close. Until she died at 86, until my mom died at 86. And so to your point about like growth that takes place, in the last 20 years of life that she was willing to, push into, which is a big deal because for her, like my mom was a functional orphan. I mean, the stuff that she had going on with me, like that was her unfinished business about like being left, like my dad had died, my brothers were all gone. Like I'm the last kind of vestigial element of stability.
Yeah.
And it's all about like, you lose your mom when you're 3 and you lose your oldest brother to suicide. You lose his son to suicide. You lose your like all this stuff, all this trauma that of course for her, like it's not trauma. This is just life. And you got to get through your freaking day.
Right.
And then I in the wake of all that, though, I mean, I'm grateful for her willingness to grow, but there's still like, okay, so there's like detritus from that I'm still working through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There was one of the things you said, Curt, at the beginning. You said, we don't want you to leave. We don't want to leave you alone with this. And that this was this exploration of trauma. And we were talking earlier about like, I will take you guys into a difficult conversation. Mm-hmm. And that's where relationships affect everything. Right. Mm-hmm. And it makes a difference. And Pep, you talking about how does one develop these relationships when we don't feel like we have anything? And it's like, if we find one person that we would want to take into a room for a difficult conversation. Mm-hmm. And one of my friends,
you should explain a little bit what you mean by taking some, because
okay,
literally so mean that you're taking us everywhere with you.
Right. Yeah. I don't really like go around.
I know. I'm just saying. Right. I'm just saying. All these trips to the West Coast.
I'm exhausted.
I'm getting lots of miles on United, but like
exactly.
I'm pretty tired.
Gosh, no wonder I'm jet lagged all the time. Not getting anything done.
Figuratively, in my mind, you are with me. Yeah. And maybe 2 years ago, when my mom she had passed away, and I had to go pick up her ashes. And it just worked out that I had to go alone because I was after I picked her ashes up, I was going to San Diego. So it was like I went there first and then went on down to San Diego. But I thought this is going to be a little rough going in there alone. And so a friend of mine, she gave me a little stone. In fact, I got it while you guys were recording. It was a little tiny stone. And she said, do you want something physical to represent that I'm going with you in this? And so I actually did bring the stone, not like bringing you guys with me to the meetings. But it's like, that made all the difference. And I was there alone. What, Curt?
I was just thinking, like, she's kind of like rubbing Pepper's head in her pocket when she's got that little stone of Pepper's forehead.
Kind of. But it's
oh, Pep. I know I'm just being so inappropriate because you're trying to be.
Well, I think Pep is rubbing off on you, but Pep.
No, I think, but it's like that taking that pocket full of stones with you.
Yeah.
Taking that, it makes a huge difference. It really does.
Yeah. It does.
Yeah, it's a practice that I've been doing too. I think it's makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Part of it is a feeling that you aren't alone.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And you're cared for, and there's people that have your back, and you can think those things, but taking it a next step of, okay, I'm going to imagine taking them with me and just having their physical support in the room.
Right.
It's been great.
Yeah.
That's really, really true. It's, in these confessional communities that we do at the practice and that others in different places are starting to create, one of the things that often gets said is like, I'm taking you all with me.
Yeah.
And we
not literally. We're establishing that.
Right. There's confidentiality issues involved. And so it has been striking to me to bear witness to the testimony of people who have described how having 6 other people in the room with them in their imagination transforms the interaction that they're having with whatever that is.
Right.
Well, and I think, and often we walk into a room and I might not have, Amy, your belief. I might not have your strength, Curt. I might not have, but if I know that I have you with me, it supplies those things for me that I don't necessarily even have for myself.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's no matter what happens, like whatever we imagine, like the worst is not going to happen because you guys are there. When I walk out of this meeting, you're still there. And it's going to be okay.
Yeah. And I mean, there is I want to say learning curve, which gets at the idea, but there is a sense in which there is a growth edge to the receptivity of someone being with you in the room. Because again, one of the difficult things about trauma is that because it takes place in the context of interpersonal relationships, when someone who is coming to find us arrives, the very thing that I long for, which is your presence, is also the very thing that is the source in my memory of the trouble in the first place.
Yeah.
And so as I move to create new neural networks that say Amy and Pepper are for me and with me and love me, I have to move through the old remembered neural networks of Amy and Pepper are, at some point they're going to leave.
Going to go away.
At some point they're going to be upset with me because those remembered experiences of trauma are far older and far more powerful.
Right.
And they're far like the network patterns at this point are far more well established, if you will, than the networks that I have of your being with me. And so that's why it requires practice of me exposing parts about me that I hate the most, that I'm sure you are going to hate, that I'm sure you are going to be upset with. And gradually over time, even, and this is why marriage is one of those things that, if you're married to somebody, like you're living with them all the time, like even if you'd like to get away, if you'd like to hide as much as you'd like to hide the part you can't get away from it. And so like, you really are in this place where you're going to be exposed, in so many different ways. But that whole process of friendship that allows even for the exposure of who we are in such a way that like, we are going to have ruptures.
Yeah.
And then how do we repair ruptures when that takes place? That's also one of the key elements of growing through and past and out of trauma into the next level of relational connection and durability and resilience.
Right.
Because it can't just depend upon a relationship in which everything is wonderful and that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and then when we experience a rupture being repaired, even though it's terrifying, then it's like, we have a little cachet.
Right.
And then we have another one.
That's right.
But we have to have
That's
a
right.
rupture in order for it to be repaired.
Right. So I've been meaning to bring up,
Yeah,
to
I
you.
don't want to talk about it. I have to go now.